Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome back to the Refined Life Podcast. I'm Bigg Vinny. That's Jeff Suter. This over here is Jared Blake. We're going to be talking to you today about church. We're going to church. We're taking it back to church. Okay? That's what we're doing. Bam!
Aren't you always interested right before he starts, what Vinny is
coming?
this going to be?
Yeah. Like what is about to smack us across the face? And this time it was
Church. I love church. Could be like that the Southern pastor. Dear God, we are gathered here today to talk about the Refined Life Podcast.
That
So,
would have been better. Yeah.
Make sure you break out your change in your wallets and don't be leaving the offering plate empty, because if you do, God's going to be watching you and your mansion in heaven just gets a little bit smaller. Okay?
Why did your preacher turn Australian toward the end?
I didn't know. I didn't think it was Australian.
Yeah, that, okay. Mighty. Oh, I went pirate.
He was a
Never mind.
pirate, yeah.
So
I mean, I feel like a Southern Baptist is a pirate, right?
I would like, if we're going to talk about this, I'd like us probably to leave out names of churches or people, because I don't want this to be a judgmental, talk crap about.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree with that.
Yeah.
I feel like we got enough of that going on in Christianity as it is. Talking
Yeah.
crap.
I feel like we can-
But I think it's like, I think where this episode helps people is a lot of people get church hurt and then they don't want to go back to church.
Oh, for sure.
And they don't realize that just because you get hurt in a church doesn't mean that there's not a church out there for you. I think your church, where you find, is where your soul gets fed.
Mhm.
You know, and sometimes obviously there's situations where you have to go where your family's soul gets fed as well. But I think that's what you're looking for in a church. You're looking for a place that you can go and feel God's presence, that you can go feel the Holy Spirit's presence. And not that everybody, like I grew up, very, I mean, we spoke in tongues and we fell out in the spirit. We ran around. There's always somebody making a lap at some point. No, we didn't do snakes, but we thought about it. But I'm saying I went to that kind of church, and I don't think everybody that gets the Holy Spirit gets it that same way. I think some people can literally just, you can see the tears stream down their face. They don't have to be making a sound. You can be looking around during praise and worship, and you'll see somebody that just the tears are streaming, and man, something's on their heart, but the Holy Spirit just got a hold of them. So I think it's different for everybody. So I want to talk about, how do you get over church hurt? How do you, what are the experiences we've all had with that? Because I think we've all had some at some point
For sure.
during our life. And what makes the difference? I mean, what are you going to church for? Because I hear the people say a lot of times, they're like, oh, well, I don't go to church because there's a bunch of hypocrites there. But I'm like, well, they're also at the laundromat and they're at the grocery store and hypocrites are everywhere. And the thing is a lot of times, I mean, the people that are going to church, they're seeking something. Like we're kind of talking about before this episode started. What led us to this episode was people are looking for something to make their life better. They're looking for something to look up to. They're looking for something to look forward to. And I think that so many times we've done that with drugs. We've done it with alcohol. We've done it with porn addictions. We've done it with food and sugar, like I did. We do it with so many other things, but the whole time the Bible's been sitting there saying, I got the answer. It's right here. Jesus is the answer, So how do we talk about those things and get people to understand that just because you've had a bad experience, even if it was a long-term bad experience, that's not how every Christian is. That's not how every church is. And then, just kind of put it out there. Let's talk about it.
Well, I mean, I can tell you for sure. I was very hurt by the church growing up because it was I felt it was a very judgmental place where we had certain sins that ranked above other sins. So much to the point that we had this church covenant on the wall, and I remember being so confused about that as a child because it was just like certain things in the Bible, and that covenant read that if you did these things, you couldn't go to church here.
Right.
And I was so
When really, if
baffled
you
by
do
it.
these things, you should be open to come to
Well,
church here. Let's help
yeah.
you.
So
Need to hear more.
Yeah.
Well, no, because they went further than that. Like one of them was on there is that you couldn't sell alcohol.
Right.
Well, my father owned convenience stores.
Right.
And it was a major deal that he couldn't sell alcohol. That's a major moneymaker.
Did
in
they
that
accept his
store.
tithing check though?
But he didn't sell any alcohol.
Oh,
He honored that commitment. And
wow.
I would notice as a child that places that that did sell alcohol, if they were making more money, it would also give them an ability to sell things cheaper if they're making more money.
Yeah.
And I always thought, well, then why aren't I seeing all these people at our church supporting my dad at his store?
Right.
But they wouldn't necessarily, they'd go to wherever it's cheaper,
Yeah.
And now when he
Or where
first
they could
started
buy
off,
alcohol and put it in a brown bag so nobody knew what they had.
right, when he first started off, we lived in a dry county, so it wasn't that big a deal. But moving on, like I just always thought that was really weird. They ranked that one particular thing that wasn't even written in the Bible as being a sin, by the way.
Yeah.
But they ranked that one thing and said you can't go to church here if you do this or you do this or do this. But I mean, you could smoke like a freight train or eat as much banana pudding as you wanted, but like there's just
In the
certain
potluck after
things,
church.
right?
I did it.
Certain things. I mean, clearly we saw in church that gluttony wasn't much of a sin for some reason,
Well, as long as
And,
the gluttony was food.
right? And so it definitely turned me off. I remember that the pastor growing up spoke a lot about this nightclub down the road called Bad Bob's, and someone would get drunk and get in an accident or just get in an accident or get pregnant or whatever. And you know what we found out later on? That very night they had been at Bad Bob's. And you're like, all that was for me was a big commercial for Bad Bob's. I wanted to go to Bad
Man, I
Bob's
wanna
so
see what's
bad.
going on at Bad Bob's.
Yeah, right.
Just with the name Bad Bob's.
You're
I'm
like,
in.
right.
You're like, what's going on at Bad Bob's then? Oh, they got pool tables. Oh, I love pool.
Oh, no.
Oh, man.
And loose women.
They got, oh, I love that too.
Alcohol and loose women. So, so I was very hurt growing up early with that. And it took a long time for me to get over that. And if I'm honest about it, what really started getting me over it was showing up to church incredibly intoxicated every Sunday morning.
It's a game for you, huh?
It wasn't a game. It was I got an attitude about me that was like, because my wife wanted to go to church.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, fine then. If you're so accepting, then we'll push the boundaries and see how accepting you are. And I would start having conversations with pastors about real touchy things that
You can do that.
where I
you
would
can
talk
do that
about
with
the fact
pastors. Don't do it with
that I
priests.
felt like that they weren't telling the truth up there, and they were like, "Well, Jared, we can't always tell the truth because people, if we tell the truth, then people won't always come, and then they won't give." And it blew my mind, like the thought of like, "Oh, so you think you're in charge of this game?"
Yeah.
And what really was the turning point for me was, I mentioned that I would come to church drunk on a regular basis, is I was in rehab. And in rehab, they had this AA book, and that AA book also talked about God. And I looked at these people in this AA room, and I was like, I don't want to listen to you people. You're all flawed. And someone said, well, just because the people are flawed, is the book flawed?
Right.
And so I started reading that book, and I was like, I can't really argue with most of the things that were in the AA book because it was just stories from different people and their experience, their strength, their hope, right? And that was what opened me up to really start looking at the Bible again, because I realized these are just flawed people, but the book isn't flawed. The book is good information. And in fact, most of that information is based off the Bible. Yeah. And so if I really think about the principles of the Bible, I also don't have a problem there either. I have a problem with the people. But people are just flawed, man. They're going to let you down.
Yeah.
And so for me, that started the idea of, if I can't trust people because they're flawed, maybe I can trust God.
Right.
And I'm sure we got a lot to talk about moving on from that. But that was the basis for me of starting from the not wanting to go to church and being hurt by church and then moving into
That's understandable.
the belief.
What about you?
I remember church growing up. I wasn't very engaged. I don't think I was engaged enough to be hurt by it. I was bored by it. Like we went Southern Baptist. My father was never really gung-ho, let's go to church, but we did the church
Was
thing.
Mom?
Yeah, Mom was the
Yeah.
leader of that
Yeah.
pack, right? And I can recall at some point sitting in the balcony, and I had two younger brothers. The youngest might have been in daycare, but it'd go Mom, Dad, me, younger brother, and Dad, me, younger brother are up there with our eyes closed, head to shoulder, just knocked out, just boredom. So I think it was I think where the church where it's changed for me is it's become more acceptable for a pastor to speak truth, if you're going to the right church,
Right.
rather than an older gentleman standing behind the pulpit reading the Bible. One of the hardest books in the world to probably read and comprehend when it's, you know, just the standard version, which is why I think a lot of people walk away from it. And so that was my experience coming up in the church was, I don't know what you're saying. You're reading something I don't want to read and can't comprehend.
Yeah.
I'm going to sleep.
Yeah, just so you didn't have any ties to it. You didn't have any.
It was like
Connect-
a
no
checkout before I
connection.
even got in
So
there.
you brought up Southern Baptist, so mine was Missionary Baptist, very similar in a lot of the views, and I think a lot of it too was like they almost looked at it growing up that if you started reading a different version of the Bible besides King James,
You're wrong.
you're wrong, and that wasn't the real Bible.
Yeah.
It was like I don't understand this one though.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's probably some of people's biggest struggle with reading the Bible is understanding that there are different versions that try to break it down in more
Let's
layman's
also remember that the
terms.
King James version is a version.
Correct.
You know, like there was versions before it. You know, I think for me, I loved church when I was a kid, and it was mainly because my stepdad didn't go. It was our way to escape, and my mom, if she didn't do, I'm gonna get emotional, but if she didn't do anything else right, she made sure that we were at those doors every Wednesday, every Sunday, every Sunday night. We were there. And it was an escape from all the bad stuff. Now, my mom took us, even though she knew that when she got home, my stepdad was going to accuse her of cheating, looking at the pastor, looking at some guy from church, he was going to
Your
accuse
pastor
her.
didn't look like my pastor then.
But brother Bob, I wouldn't say Brother Bob was the most handsome
Brother
man.
Bob, I like that.
Brother Bob at the
Brother
Lighthouse
Bob.
Tabernacle down there.
Hey, was
Yeah.
his? So he wasn't even kin to Bad Bob.
He lived.
He wasn't.
No,
the Bad Bob?
he was Bad Bob after Bad Bob found Jesus. He became Good Bob.
Okay.
But he was Brother Bob to us, and he was at the Lighthouse Tabernacle down in Lick Creek, down on Lick Creek in Perry County, Tennessee.
Tell me your country.
Yeah,
without
and that's
telling
the
me your
first place I
country.
remember going to church. And one of the things I remember is, I had to be probably 2.5, 3 years old, and I remember going into our Sunday school and we played Bible baseball. And it was one of the coolest things because you could win a base, and then if you got a question right, you get on base. If you made it all the way to home, then you would get a treat of some kind. Now sometimes it was like a sucker, or sometimes it was a little Bible figure or something like that. But you'd get something, and so you were excited about that. So there was excitement in that church. Now this is full gospel. I'm talking about brother Bob. His wife was a singer. Then I think Brother Don took over after Brother Bob. Same thing. There was always good music. It was always lively. It was always fun. We did the potlucks and stuff. If you went down into the basement, I can remember the church so vividly. You went down into the basement. You could go down there, and that's where all the Sunday school rooms were and things like that. And the kitchen was in there, which I loved the most. And then outside, you go outside and we'd play. And after church, we'd go out there and play. It's where I learned how to play Red Rover. It was great.
When's the last time you heard Red Rover?
But I,
been a minute.
the thing was I was a big chunky kid.
No one wanted that Rover to
So
come
no,
over.
I didn't get caught over until I was the last. Red Rover, do not send Vinny over. The ground starts shaking. The guy's got a cup there and he's got a little water, and it's looks like the T-Rex in Jurassic Park. Anyway, but I loved going to church. I enjoyed church. So I didn't really get hurt as a kid. Now, I remember the time that I decided to get saved. I was like 5 years old, and we watched this movie called Heaven's Gates and Hell's Flames or something like that. And in there's basically this guy decides not to go forward that day and go get saved. And he starts to go out of the seat a couple of times. I remember it as vivid as it is right now. Starts to go out a couple of times, and he decides not to. And then he dies in a car wreck on the way home. And then they showed him, the person that was in the car with him that was saved went up to heaven. And then he was showed just this fire, and you could hear these screams. And I was like, I ain't leaving here today until somebody prays over me. And I say the Lord's Prayer, and I bring, God into my heart. And, I was terrified, So I think the old way of being was to scare you into submission. And I'm not saying there's not some of that, because I think that there are consequences when we don't do certain things, when we don't.
I just love that you You and I are so alike and then so different as human beings as well, and so different as children. Because I
Yeah.
remember hearing those stories and going, I don't believe that.
I was
Vinny's like,
instantly-
not me. And I was like, whatever.
Well,
Yeah.
it reminds me that to become a member of the church,
Yeah.
you had to not only
You had to go through beat down.
well,
In a game.
you know, it at the end of the service, it was always who's going to come forward, right? So you'd have 2 people, 3 people, however
Yeah.
many people each service that would come forward. And that was supposed to be your profession of faith, but that's how you became a member of the church as well. So in order to get baptized within the church,
Yeah.
you had to go to the front
Yeah.
at the end of the service.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's kind of went away in today's church.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think there's, and I see that in a lot of churches. There's not as many like, the call to the altar.
Right.
That there used to be. I miss that because I mean, and I'm not saying I know some people get uncomfortable being in front of people. I've never been that way. I'm like, in front of people is my thing, but I can understand why some people would be like, man, I don't want to walk up in front of everybody. It makes you feel like they're judging me, For me, I never felt like that in our church. I mean, it was such a love there,
Yeah, I think though you have a very different perception because of what was going on in your
Yeah,
life,
absolutely.
So
To me, it's like I wanted to be around those people. Like, oh,
Right.
you're actually talking to me and not punching me in the
absolutely.
face. That's good.
the with the church that we're currently going to, I like the way they do it because it is and it's not that same thing. It's very much. We get to the end of service, and then they tell everybody, hey, if you want to talk to anybody, there's people on each side of the
Right.
stage to pray with you and go through that. And then like once a month, then we have a baptism service at the end of things. So it kind of gives you an opportunity to not feel so strange about things.
And I think that's got to do too, though, with, I mean, your church is a big church.
Yeah.
At my dad's church, my dad was a preacher, but, even at the Lighthouse Tabernacle, I mean, there wasn't more than.
I have famous friends. I'm just saying.
Oh, famous people.
Oh, famous.
Answer it.
You want to know who that is? Oh,
Let's
Let's
talk
answer
to him.
Hey, Jared Weeks. Hey, I'm about to put you on speakerphone. We're doing a podcast right now.
You're on our podcast now. Hey, yeah.
I don't know that he has that kind of time. They said you could go on Bluetooth, or we could just hold you to the mic for a minute.
Oh, I'm in the Jeep right now. I'm like literally 2 minutes from the house. I ordered Mexican food, so we're gonna go home and eat some fajitas.
Oh, he's gonna have gas.
Heck yeah. Well, we were just talking about church.
Oh, Eric Church?
No. No, we were talking about offensive subjects, and we were like, well, church is one of those. Let's talk about that.
Yeah. I knew that's what you did, man. I was just
just joshing you.
I was just joshing you.
Well, hey, buddy.
I'm sensitive is church, man. A church subject, especially these days, right?
Yeah.
Right.
It's like, whose toes do I not want to step on, and whose toes do I want to step on?
Listen, I got big feet. I can't help but step on people's
nobody
toes.
wants Vinny to step on anybody's toes.
I will step right on those
Not
toes.
with them big old clod hoppers.
Clodhoppers, come on with it. I knew you was country like me. He might be a rock singer, but he's country.
You damn right, Perry County.
You damn right. Well, we just wanted to answer because we wanted you to know how much we love you. So we'll let you get back to your Mexican food with your cool family, but we're gonna have you on the podcast.
It's the last meal I get, man. I'm heading out on tour tonight.
It's the Last Supper.
Speaking of church.
Speaking of sensitive subject. But yeah, love you guys. Talk soon. I know.
All right.
All right, love you, buddy.
Love you
See
too,
you.
buddy.
Bye. That was great. Yeah, I mean, the smaller churches, obviously, you're going to have, that altar call thing is still going to be there, especially in smaller towns because that's the way they've always done it. In the bigger churches, I think, man, if you did an altar call there, I mean, you got 1,000 people there, you might have 300 people come down there. How do you pray for 300 people individually? So.
Well, I think too in the larger churches like the one that we're at, the pastor becomes a little bit of celebrity.
Yeah,
He's doing
absolutely.
his job, and so it's almost like he can't really be accessible like that because
Right.
people tend to treat him more like a star than they do
Yeah.
the pastor. Like he was talking to us one day about it, and he was like, "Dude, he's like, I have to convince people sometimes, like, no, other people can pray for you. I'm not Jesus. I don't." And he's like, they try to give you that Jesus complex. Like, no, I need this person to pray for me. And you're like,
Yeah.
no, I'm not sure that you're understanding how prayer works.
And I think
This is
also
not
too,
me.
you got to realize, like, I think there's so much pressure put on the preacher to be perfect all the time. Like people are waiting to see.
You know, there's a charity that Jen and I support that their whole basis is therapist for pastors. Because the
Right.
pastors don't have anybody to turn to. I mean, you forget this pastor's a human as well.
Yeah,
He
right.
might be struggling with addiction. He might be struggling with infidelity. And if you admit that, these are things that crush your career,
Yeah.
take away your finances immediately, as well as, hurt you in the public eye and possibly keep
Absolutely.
you from ever doing your job. None of us are in that public eye. We can screw up and still get
Yeah.
our jobs back.
Yeah.
And that's a pressure that none of us.
We're in a business where you can
understand.
screw up and it makes your job better.
I mean, yeah.
You're an alcoholic? Cool. Come on and sing for us,
right,
buddy.
right. There's a charity that we support though that
That's cool. Yeah.
that keeps people from necessarily knowing and gives pastors a place to go and talk about their issues.
That's dope.
Well, and so what I was saying is for me, I didn't get church hurt as a kid. Church hurt for me came after Biggest Loser.
Really?
Yeah, I started getting asked to speak at all these churches because I was open about my faith on the show. Everybody was very
Right.
aware that I was a Christian. And
How much did they want to pay you for your time, Vinny?
well, I always went. My dad, the way he did it, even with our gospel, he had a gospel group called Heaven's Hands. He always said, "Look, we do it for a pass the plate love offering. Whatever God tells you to give, and whatever He lays on your hearts, that's what you give." And so I went with that same mentality. I'm like, look, I said, obviously, if I'm gonna, the one that really finally got me.
Listen, I know I said we don't have to mention names, but I could care less if you mention those names.
What names?
The
The
one
ones that got
the
you.
church that
Uh,
really got you.
Honestly, I don't remember the name of the church. I just know it was in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and they flew me out. And there was more than one. There's one right down the road here. There was more than one church that led me to getting hurt. Because at first I was like, oh, it was just that one church, so I kind of let it go. But it was it wasn't the small churches, the small, 300 to 500 people or less than that. I spoke at churches with 20 people in them. I didn't care. I'd go anywhere. I felt like I had a good message to carry, and I incorporated God in that message 100% because He was part of my life. But I went to Albuquerque, New Mexico. I'd already had a couple of them kind of be weird. It was always with the money. So it was like, I spoke for 5 different groups of 1,000 people. I spoke twice Saturday night, 3 times Sunday morning. 1,000 people each time, 5,000 people. Every single sermon, they would take up their offering and their tithes and stuff like that. And then it would turn around and in my name and in what I was trying to create, which was going to be called Camp Summershine, they would take up another offering that was supposed to be directly for me. Now, if you have 1,000 people, you can pretty much guarantee it's going to be $10 a person that's going to, give you a love offering when you're there. Now, I wasn't expecting them. There's 5,000 people. I wasn't expecting them to hand me a check for $50,000. I already knew. I knew enough about, churches to know that wasn't going to happen. But, the fact that they took up their offering and then turned around and did a separate offering for me, telling them that was going towards what I was doing. And then at the end of the 5 different sermons that I spoke and I played guitar and sang and did all this, they handed me a check for $1,800. And I'm not, I'm pretty sure that out of 5,000 people, they gave more than like 20 cents a person,
Yeah.
or 30 cents, whatever that would be. And so I looked at the guy and I said, hey, I said, y'all, and I'd been different if they only took up the one offering and they just gave me some, money out of
Piece
that.
of it. Yeah.
But because they took up 2 different offerings, one was supposed to be for my charity that I was trying to create, which I told you about because I was asking you about how do we create a 501c3 because we didn't have a clue. You were working on it at the time with what you were doing. And I wanted to make this place called Camp Summershine. And I wanted it to be a place where throughout the year, it would be a place you could go and get a jump start on how to lose weight, how to eat right, how to meal prep, how to work out, all these things. So people would pay big money, $2,500, $3,500 a week, whatever, to come and learn and have that experience with me and other people from Biggest Loser that had been through it, bringing in some big time coaches, things like that. But the rest of the, that's what it was for the whole year that made money. But then in the summer, it became a summer camp for kids for those 2 months, June and July. And these were kids that could not afford to go to camp. They get to come for free. We would supply the buses to pick them up, bring them down, give them a great experience like I got to receive from church. Church camp. I went to Burns, Tennessee. I never, as long as I live, I love that church camp. That's where I met Ken Harrell that taught me how to write songs. I have so much with that. It's called Camp Christian, Burns, Tennessee. I don't even know if it's still there now. I would assume it is. But I wanted to be able to give kids that same experience that helped mold me and make me be a believer and kept me on a positive note that made me believe that there's good things out there, even if what you're going through at home sucks, you know? And so they handed me that $1,500 check, and I was sitting there thinking, I said, dude, I'm going to be able to make a dent and look at this, property I was looking at and all this other stuff. And they handed me that check, and I was like, I mean, I was thinking, I was going to make 15, 20 grand at least that day for my charity. And I wasn't even taking it personally. I mean, I was taking, $1,000 or $1,500 for my personal self to make sure I was able to be gone for that time. But I wasn't taking that, bulk share of the money. And I'd already put back, I had about 10 to 12 grand put back from speaking at these smaller churches and able to put some back. And then all of a sudden it was like, that hit me. And I was like, do I argue with them right now? And I looked at the guy and said, there's no way this is correct. He goes, well, that's what we felt we needed to give you. I'm like, I mean, I spoke 5 different times at 5 different, sermons for 1,000 people each time. And you think 1,800 was just, how did you even come up with that number? Like what made your brain said, 1,800, not 2,000, not 5,000, not, hey, let's give him $1,000 per,
or not let's not give him what the people gave him.
Yeah.
Like,
right.
I mean,
that was the big issue. And so I was like, I got hurt because I'm like, man, is it really this greedy? And like I said, it happened 2 or 3 more times before that, but that was the final straw. I was like, you know what? I'm not speaking at churches anymore. And I let it affect me. Now, I was actually talking to my stepmom about this situation. And I was like, man, I said, I'm so upset about this because, I've given my all to this and I was doing it for a right cause. I wasn't pocketing the money. I was doing everything that I felt like God wanted me to do. And she said, well, she's like, if you go at it with the attitude of your dad, then you have to realize that what came through to you on that day was what God intended for you to get. And maybe God's telling you that he doesn't want you to go and make that camp. And that's not where your future is. And that's not what you're supposed to be doing. Or maybe it might be something you do one day, but it's not something you're doing right now. And I never thought of it that way. And I was like, okay. And so she helped me kind of get over that church hurt. It took me longer than obviously that one conversation. I didn't go to church anywhere for probably 3-4 years after that. I just quit going to church. I would still read my Bible periodically, not really on a consistent basis. I'd still pray. I'd still, talk to God and things like that, but I just didn't go to an organized church. And it wasn't until my ex-wife, said, look, I really think we should start going to church somewhere. I was like, all right, well, let's go somewhere. We went to 3 or 4 different ones, couldn't find somewhere that we really identified with. And finally we started going to this place called The Gathering that they had at the movie theater.
Oh, dude, I used to go there.
Yeah, and
I remember the name.
Yeah, and it was David Foster.
We just started right before it ended. It was the pastor died.
He died. Yeah.
We started like right before it ended, and we loved the place. The kids
he was the
loved
best
the place,
speaker.
And,
we'd go to the movie theater, and then so we would go in there, and this guy would talk, Dr. David Foster, and one of the best speakers I've heard. He reminded me so much of my dad because he was saying what the Bible really says. Mm-hmm. And he would be like, I know this is going to get on some of your toes, but I'm about to say it because that's what God put on my heart. And that meant the world to me. It's like, hey, I'm okay if you decide not to come back because I'm just giving you the truth. I'm not telling you that I'm judging you. I'm just giving you what the Bible says.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed that. And I went there and I enjoyed that so much. Well, then he died. And then I had this thing like, I was going to my dad's church. He died. Didn't go anywhere for a while. Started going to this guy's church, and then he died. I was like, maybe I'm the bad
You
juju.
should stop going to churches, bro.
I was like, I told Brian, I was like, listen, you may not want me here, no. So I didn't go anywhere for a long time after that. Kind of was like, I don't know, I don't want to go through the whole finding another church again. Then, going through divorce, a lot of stuff happened. Definitely started turning to God. I'm like, dude, I know I'm doing wrong. I'm not making the right decisions. Met my now wife, and she wanted to go, and she found this church called Church on the Rock, and Church on the Rock was predominantly a black church. Almost everybody in there was black except for me and my wife. So we walked in. I was like, oh, I'll say this is really what they say, like on the TV where they worship. Man, the worship was fire.
Yeah,
I mean, and fire in church was really cool, But it was amazing. And actually, the guy that was the worship leader used to produce Whitney Houston. Who's a producer on the Bodyguard soundtrack, and CeCe Winans' brother-in-law. And so I'm talking about the church was awesome. My wife started singing in the church, and being part of that. I sang a couple times. It was the first time ever in my entire life. And I went to church my whole life in the churches that spoke in tongues. I didn't even believe in it. I was like, they're just up there mumbling something. It was the first time ever that I spoke in tongues. And God really got to me at that place. And the Holy Spirit probably would have kept going there. He actually was the pastor at my wedding with my now wife. He was my pastor phenomenal speaker, super connected to God, loved it, every bit of it. They were really doing everything on a real note, and I love that church even this day. I mean, if we should go back and visit again, but um, I literally went there until we moved far enough away that we really couldn't get the kids in the car and make it up there in a feasible amount of time to actually go. Now, we'll say this, like you've always heard in black church, we would get there at 9, and we would not leave until about 1:30, 2 o'clock. That was a real thing. It really happens. But that time goes by pretty dang fast because you are just in it. I mean, there's always something. And when Pastor Rogan speaks, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm with you, brother. Amen. Oh, I need to stop doing that. Yeah, I know I need to be better about that. Oh, I agree, brother. I mean, you're in the sermon. So, anyways, went to that church. Loved it. Ended up moving far enough away. Didn't have anywhere to go for a while. Ended up, getting invited by Jamie No to our church that we go to now, and this church is so different for me because I'm used to going to church where it's hellfire and brimstone, stepping on your toes, and it's preaching the word every single time. This was a church where they were showing the love of God. And they were doing that by, meeting people where they're at, finding people that had needs, even if they weren't Christian. And they were saying, hey, we just want to show you the love of Jesus, because the love of Jesus wasn't limited to people who were already doing good.
That's right.
And that's what really blew me up about this church was like, man, they're out there just being what Jesus set out for us to be, which was to love people. God is love, set out for us to do that. Now, that we will still talk in church. I mean, we'll still talk to each other. We'll confess our problems to each other. We'll talk about them. Pastor Brian will let you know, like, yeah, I mean, in the Bible, it says it's wrong to do that, and he'll let you know. But he'll let you know in such a loving way that you're like, you feel like you can get better and be better, as opposed to feeling like, man, I've messed up so bad, I can't ever go look at God in the face again.
Yeah.
So it's been a great church for me. And so it's healed a lot of my church hurt that I had. It was the first church I spoke in since all this stuff happened. And so that was really what kind of healed my church hurt and made me really get back in the word of God so much,
you hit on several things that I related to, but one of them kind of off topic, but just showing that miraculous part of God again. I only spoke at one church, and that church took up a love offering. And before I left and went and did that, my wife had, I guess I was probably in the hotel room about to go to the church. So on a Wednesday night, they're in this young adults thing that when we speak at. And my wife called me and she was like, hey, our accounts are really low. There's this and this and this and this. She was like, and I just noticed that like our tithe comes out automatically. And we don't make the kind of money that we used to make.
Right.
And I was like, yeah, so? And she was like, well, the tithe is set up off of what we made last year, not what we made this year.
Right.
And I was like, yeah, but there were so many years that I didn't tithe at all.
Right.
And she was like, but it's a large amount of what we make is now going to the church. And I was like, I understand your thought process on that, and my wife is usually way, way more faithful about that kind of stuff than I am.
Yeah.
But like the way she phrased it, I was like, I'll be darned if I'm going to answer to the devil on this one. Like, I mean, I'm going to put confidence in God right now and tell you for sure, 100%, whatever money is about to go out this month, it's going to come right back to us.
Yeah.
And she was like, where? And I was like, I don't know, but I can guarantee you this. However he does it, he's going to do it in such a way that it's going to be undeniable by either one of us or our children.
Yeah.
Amen.
And she was like, okay. And so that night, I didn't know anything about a love offering. We get done with it, and they take up love offering, and pastor comes to me and goes, I know this isn't what you're used to getting paid, for coming out to an event, but here you go. And I was like, I'm not taking that. And he goes, the Lord told me, it's in an envelope, and he's like, the Lord told me that you were going to say that.
Yeah.
You were going to try not to take this. And I was like, I mean, okay, give it to me, and I'm just going to give it right back to you. Like, I'm not taking money from the church. And he was like, yeah, I got that feeling that you were going to give this back to the church. But he also told me to tell you that this particular amount of money means something to you. Take it. And I'll be darned if it wasn't to the penny exactly what our tithe was. I still get chills thinking about it.
Ain't that something?
It was exactly, and I called my wife, and I was like, yeah, I can believe this. And, but so the tithing thing, I don't forget. Oh, it was about the love offering side of thing and speaking at churches. So that was my only experience in that. But the restoration of church, and you brought up something else that hit me. Um, so I started going to the gathering like a month before the pastor died, and it was the first church I'd been into in years that I was really blown away by. Exactly what you said. He was just truthful, just bam, 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 bam.
So good.
And he died, and the kids were loving going to church, and so we started off, trying to find another church, and we were looking all around the Brentwood, Franklin area because that was the area we were living in at the time, and man, I just didn't find anything. And finally, we found this one church. We were like, I kind of like this one. And after service, I kept trying to remember, man, that pastor looked familiar to me. And finally, I placed it. Back when I was doing concrete work, I did his floor. And he was the most god-awful person to work for. He was horrible. He was just mean. And so I said something to my wife about it, and she was like, listen, you shouldn't be that way about it. Like maybe he's changed. Maybe he was having a rough week. You don't know what he was going through. Give him the benefit of the doubt. And so I said, okay, so we'll see. And so we go up afterwards, and he had put on, it was a good sermon, and I spoke to him afterwards, and he was like, oh, yeah, nice to meet you. And I was like, we actually met once before. And he was like, how? And I was like, I did your concrete for you. And he goes, oh, let's talk in a minute. And I think, well, maybe he's going to apologize or something for being such an ass. No.
He come told you
He told you what was wrong.
He waited until every one of those people left, and then he told me all about all the wrong and how disappointed he was in that company that I worked for. And I was blown away. It's like, I came to you and told you what your sermon meant to me this morning.
And
you took that opportunity to belittle me and the company that I had worked for at the time.
Yeah.
Now, whether it was crap work, which it wasn't, but even if it had been crap work, that is, as a pastor, that was the opportunity that you took.
That's tough.
Yeah.
And it was like, I walked out of that church and I was like, forget church. I'm not going back. All these guys are just full of crap. And I wasn't turned off by the church members at that point as much as I was turned off with the powers that be of churches. Yeah. And so to me, I decided that was just a nail in the coffin. I'm not going back again. I felt like, God, I have no problem with you, but I've given churches a chance, multiple times now in different types of churches. And I keep coming back around and they just keep proving me wrong and or proving themselves wrong. And I sitting on the couch one night, hadn't been to church in probably 3-4 years. And my daughters come down from upstairs and they've gotten ready for church on Saturday night. And they're like, hey, you should come with us. And I was like, I'm not that big on church, let alone on a Saturday night.
Yeah.
And because in my head, I'm thinking, all these douchebag pastors that I've met that's like hurt me in this. Like, last thing I want to hear is the guy that's going to speak on Saturday night. And they're like, well, we really think you should go. And I was like, not interested. Appreciate it. Have a good time. And they leave. Come back and they're like, hey, I really think you would have enjoyed this message. And I was like, I'm just not into church anymore. Like, I'm glad that you guys are going, glad that you believe something. And so they said, could you please go with us next Saturday night? And I looked at my calendar and I was home. How do you turn down your child asking you to go to church?
At this point, they're begging.
Right. And they were like, we really believe that you would get something out of this guy. He's kind of a lot like you.
Yeah.
And so I show up, and it's a big church, a lot of artsy sort of stuff around that I could see where I would fit in with this. But I'm also like, this is just a ploy. This is just the way you're getting people in. That's why you get so many young people going to this church. You're just like, blah, blah, blah. And I'm judging this thing hardcore. And he walks up on that stage, and he slides off his flip-flops, and I was like, look at this punk.
He
Look at this poser.
Jesus Christ.
Right. And
he's grounding from the stage.
And man, he lit into that congregation like nothing I'd ever seen. And I was looking around at this church thinking, why aren't these people leaving? I mean, like, he just ripped my heart out instantly and told me everything I was doing wrong. And so we got done, and they were like, do you like him? And I was like, I didn't dislike him.
You don't want to give him the full win.
Right.
Just give him a partial win.
So I started going there when I was in town. And it was every single time. you could not deny that he was just spitting the truth. And every Sunday when he'd get up there, he'd go, listen, if you get mad at what I'm about to say, understand I didn't say it.
Take it up with Jesus.
This is in the Bible. We go through books of the Bible in their entirety to make sure that you know that I'm not preaching about what happened on TV, whatever the media is saying, or what's happening in the polls right now with the election or anything else, that this is just where we were. And if it lines up with what's going on in your life, that's because the Lord lined that up, not me.
Oh,
And
Love it.
and he would go into that approach. And so finally I started thinking, well, there might be something to this. And so I'd set up a meeting with him. And I asked him, how did you decide how much you get paid? And he was like, it's a great question. He's like, so, a lot of pastors do different things. He's like, some pastors look at it based on an average of their congregation or, different things. He was like, I looked at it this way. There was a certain salary that I needed in order to survive. And if you look at that, and he told me about what the income was. He was like, if you look at that for a man with a family that is in a church 7 days a week for 12 to 14 hours a day, so his wife can't possibly work another job, that's not asking a whole lot to make that amount of money. He's like, so I wanted a figure that I felt like no one could argue with me on. I wanted a figure that also was based off of a smaller congregation. So they gave me that pay. He's like, I didn't take a single dime until we had about 100 people coming every Sunday. He's like, and then they started paying me a little part-time position. And he said at 500 people, they took me to a full-time position. And that's where it stayed. And I was like, well, you got 5,000 people going here now. And he's like, yeah, but I don't want my pay to ever be dictated over what I say. And when you start running your pay based off of how many people are in your congregation, what you say will change. And he was like, and I wanted to know that I could lose most of this congregation based off of telling the truth. And he's like, and that's the way it's going to stay.
I love it.
I love
And
it.
we talked more about, because at that point, then he kind of had me, and I was like, so, but you're so capable of creating something big like this. Why would you
Reel them in.
Why would you not take more? And he goes, the Lord finds ways to bless you in other ways. He was like, I can't remember the last time I paid nearly full price for a car. People want to help. They recognize that you're trying to do what you can, and they want to help. It's like the amount of times that someone picks up my dinner is they saw me out somewhere. It was like the amount of help that I get, and he was like I put out a book, and I put another book, and the congregation bought that book to support me.
Yeah.
He was like, I don't even think most of the people read the book. I think they just wanted to support me.
Yeah.
And so they bought the book. He was like, so the Lord continues to provide in all sorts of ways.
Yeah.
But, since then, outside of the time that I've spent at our church, since then, it's still the place that grabs me the most and grabs my children. Yeah. And I just witnessed the truths. One of the big truths that he has really been on for about the last 4 years is, in the beginning, it was, I guess longer than that, probably 5-6 years. Hillary Clinton is not your God.
Yeah.
Donald Trump is not your God. President Biden, not your God. You need to be putting your faith in God, not these men that you elect or didn't elect to go in there, because they're not changing anything about my future. Women. And he was like, I can say that because no one I ever voted for ever actually got presidency. And he was like, I know that God's listening to my prayers. He's putting people in the office, whether you like them being there or not, for particular reasons, whether you like those reasons or not.
Yeah.
And, he said, and, he also said that during those times in particular, he's like, I want you to stop identifying as a Republican or a Democrat and answer to being a child of God. Right. That's what you are.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
And he said, he mentioned one Sunday that he still gets quite a few death threats every Sunday. And I asked him about it one day in some off time, and he goes, he's like, the funny thing is that we have about 2,000 people that watch us online that are self-proclaimed atheists. Never gotten a death threat from an atheist. Yeah. All of my death threats have always come from Christians.
Wow.
Crazy.
Crazy.
So when you look at that, you understand that that's what you're dealing
Clearly
with.
They don't understand the love of Jesus.
there's a logical reason then, if that's what you're dealing with, to why we get church hurt, as you put it. You know, And I think that pastors do as well. I think they get very church hurt, and then so I give it up to anybody out there right now in this day and age
Yeah.
that will stand up there and tell the truth. And on that same subject, real quick, I want to hear what you have to say about this. On that subject, the amount of people, to anyone out there that's listening to this right now, this may be very offensive to you. The amount of people that can look in a Bible and then decide, well, yeah, but maybe not that one. The fact that you can pick and choose what verses you believe and what verses you do not believe, that blows my mind. I feel like you're playing God when you do that. And I don't understand. In my opinion, the Bible is completely infallible. If I thought it was fallible, I wouldn't be able to believe in any of it. That's who I am, though. If I can find fault in it, then I'm like, how do I believe anything else?
And I think it's an interesting point with the Bible is understanding the difference. The New Testament and the Old Testament are different covenants. So the Old Testament is based before Jesus came and died as the ultimate sacrifice for us. And so things were different, and the things that were there are different than the New Covenant, which is how we live now, because we were once living as sinners who had to go sacrifice a lamb or whatever, when we did
But
something
now
wrong.
there is a lot of history in that's super, super valuable.
Oh, absolutely. I think the Old Testament is very important because it teaches us how we got to the New Testament and why God had to send his only son.
If you really want to look at it, there's a lot of things going on in society right now that match the Old Testament.
Oh, yeah.
Right around that time, God was like, I'm done with this.
I'm done with this, yeah.
Yep. He's like, let's see here. Let's change some things. So, and to me, it's like reading the Bible can be tough because you don't understand sometimes what you're reading.
Or sometimes you do and you don't want to.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Oh.
But I think there's
Stop
always
doing what?
God will put the scriptures in your life right in front of you, and you'll never know. I mean, I've been at a gym before and looked up on the wall, and it just have the scripture. It just have like Philippians 14:37, whatever, and I'm like, wonder what that is.
Right.
And I go look it up, and it's something I needed that day.
Yeah.
Or something to help me become a better person because I'm like, man.
And you could read that verse 2 years from now,
and it
means something different on that day.
Yeah.
So I'm curious with you because sometimes people say, well, if people don't know that you're a Christian, that's a bad thing. But I feel like that a lot of people, if I find someone who's just a great person, I don't assume that they're Christian. If I see someone who lets me know about all the rules and regulations of Christianity, I assume those are Christians.
No.
So when I just meet good-hearted people, I don't necessarily assume they're Christian. And I think that's the way I felt about you. And then one day you said that you got up every day and read your Bible. And I was like, oh, I didn't know that. And I hope you don't take that offensive because I just thought you were a great human being. But it hadn't occurred to me why you might be a great human being. And so I think that once again, in today's age, that's a very different approach. But you're taking that approach every morning to get your day started right. And I'd like to hear, what got you to that point then from, falling asleep, in Sunday school to.
Yeah, it's a very good question.
So interestingly enough, I was in food sales for Cisco Nashville back in, I think I started that in 2008. And one of the accounts I picked up was a larger account here in town, coffee. They serve a whole lot of coffee. And I was challenged with getting that account, getting our coffee makers placed in that account. Because if you get the coffee, you get the cups, right? You get the filters, you get the lids, you get all of it. So from a business perspective, it was go sell them coffee and get everything.
Right.
And as I started going after that account, there was a guy by the name of Charles Snoddy who became one of my best mentors I've ever had in my life. He's passed now, but what I learned from Charles was you don't have to be perfect. Like, we'd be walking through the church and he'd be like, damn it, Jeff, you gonna get us more damn coffee or what? Right? And for me, it's like, man, you'd never hear a pastor from Southern Baptist say damn, period, much less walking through the church.
Right.
And I'm like, this man can quote scripture left and right, speak in tongues. I mean, his relationship with the Lord was mighty. And to see what he had been through in life, the good, the bad, the ugly, from drug addiction to being a veteran, to, just having faults, but still finding his way to just really diving into the Bible, the Word, his family, the church, to the point of working for the church. Just really opened the door to me to maybe I do want some of this.
Right.
Um, maybe I can come back around to this and really dive back in, knowing that I don't have to be perfect, and just really need that relationship with the Lord. So what was supposed to be a business opportunity turned into myself and my family attending church there for quite some
That's
time.
awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's
Mhm.
kind of my church story.
That's cool.
I owe it to Charles Snoddy and his family and that church.
That's cool.
Yeah.
No, I love that. And I think, what is it? It says if you plant the seed at an early age, even if they get away from it, they'll come back like the prodigal son, and you think about how many times you've been tempted, like, I'm not going back to church again. And then somehow you keep finding your way back in. You find your way back to the Bible, you find your way back to those
Mm.
things.
Mhm.
And I think for me, I was never mad at God, but I was upset that my dad died when he was only 43, especially because he was a preacher. And on the day he died, he preached his own sermon. He preached his own funeral. So his sermon was about the angel of death and how it could be, you got to always be ready because it could be your time. He said in the sermon, he said, you could die in a car wreck on the way home tonight.
Yeah.
And he died in a car wreck on the way home that night. And it's amazing how God works because my dad was a stickler. If you were grounded, you were grounded, right? My brother kept asking me, he's like, Dad, can I just ride home with my girlfriend? Because he was staying after church to handle all the stuff, and everything from getting the ties and the bank bags and all the other stuff together. And he's like, Dad, can I go? He's like, no, no. And of course, then inevitably somebody come in and started talking to my dad before he was ready to go. And then he takes it. Finally, he's like, Dad, can I please just go with her? And he's like, no, you're grounded. Finally, he asked me one more time. He goes, you know what? You can go, but I'm adding 2 days. And he's like, okay. When my dad never gave in. I mean, it was not his, that was his thing. If you were grounded, you were grounded.
Yeah.
Goes home with his girlfriend. She drops him off at the house, whatever she leaves. If my brother had been in the car, in the truck with my dad that night, where he normally always sat in the passenger seat, he would have been crushed by a tree. I mean, completely just gone.
Yeah.
And I fully believe that God was like, hey, it's not his time to go yet. So he went and rode, you know, in a different car that he never should have been able to do because that's how my
Mm.
dad was. And where the truck hit, it hit on the passenger side in the tree. And so we didn't know it at the time. My dad didn't die from the car wreck. He actually had a blood clot in his system that went through it and killed him, which is what caused him to wreck. So when he hit the tree, it hit on the passenger side. So everybody, when my best friend from high school found him, Wesley Hedgepath, and he called me. I was at the theater watching Ninja Turtles with my buddy Keith Johnson and his son. And the reason I was there, I was supposed to go to church that day. I told my dad I was going to come. I didn't go because Keith called me. Saturday night, I was hanging out with Keith, and he's like, "Yeah, man." He's like, "I'm supposed to take my son, to a movie tomorrow." He said, "But I really just don't have the extra money, to take him." And I was like, "You know what? I'll just take us." I wanted to go see Ninja Turtles anyways, so we went and seen that Ninja Turtles. My buddy Hedge keeps calling, and I'm like, I'm trying to text. Back then, I had one of those phones. You're like 77553. So I text like, "I'm in a movie. Call back soon." He goes, and he said, "Call me now." So I'm like, all right. So I go out. And I think something's happened. Like he's upset about something. Maybe his wife got in a fight. I don't know what it is. And I get on. He goes, "Dude, I'm sitting here at the truck with your dad right now." He goes, "He's inside. I can't get the door open. He's been in a wreck. He hit a tree." I'm like, "Well, is he okay? Is he alive?" He goes, "I think so." He goes, like, "There's really no blood, and the tree hit on the opposite side. I think he's just knocked out." So I was like, "Okay, good." So I go back up. I get Keith and them, and I say, "Hey, we got to go right now. My dad's just been in a bad
Yeah.
car wreck." Get back to the apartment I lived in the Grandview Apartments in Bellevue. And I literally, as I open the door, as I unlock it and start to open the door to go in, my phone rings and it's my little brother. And he was calling from our home phone. And he just says he's gone. And boy, I just hit the ground. I didn't get to have a lot of a relationship with my dad when I was younger, but we had a great relationship over the last 2 or 3 years of that life as I found music and got into music because that's where our first common ground was.
Yeah.
He was a baseball guy, I was a football guy. He was, he wasn't around when I was a kid because, my mom and the situations that happened there. And so anyways, I was just like devastated. And I go there and of course I see him laying in the bed and I can see, it looks like he's fine. I'm trying to wake him up, and of course he'd been dead for a couple hours at that point, but um, it was amazing to see how God works and how He puts the things in your life, when you need it. I was mad. I was upset. Why would you take him? And I said to my stepmom, who we're talking about a lot when we talk about God, but I was upset about it. This is probably a year later. I was like, I just don't understand. There's all these crackheads and all these loser people in the world, and all these people that don't even serve God on a daily basis. I just don't understand why he would take Dad, and Dad was only 43 years old, and we had just got this relationship, and why would you take him when there's all these other terrible people? And Beverly, my stepmom, she's so smart and good. She goes, I'm mad that he's gone too. She goes, I'm upset and I miss him. And I'm gonna start crying. But she's like, but don't you think God looked and said that your dad, who devoted his entire life, every second of every day, to God over the last 19 years of his life, 20 years of his life, he was ready to go to heaven. But so many of these people that are crackheads and that are, not found God yet, they're not ready to go. And God's trying to give them another day and another chance to try and find their way to heaven. Like God keeps giving us these chances. He's like, your dad is for sure in heaven.
Yeah.
There ain't no way around it. So maybe, when you look at it, stop looking at it from the point of view of like, man, I miss my dad, and look at it from the point of view of like, your dad, that's all he was working towards in life, was making it to there. So he got to go home, and we're all going to go join him there one day. But all these other people over here that you're wishing died instead of your dad, those people right there still need another day, another chance to go out there and find Jesus, to go out there and find God. And obviously, I start crying, because I'm just like, rips my heart out that I felt like I was being selfish, but also was still upset, that he would be gone. But as it would come around, it really helped me heal. And of course, I wrote a song called "How Are Things Up There" for my dad that we'll play on a show at some point. But having that moment with her, having that wisdom with you, knowing that God continues to put people in your life that can steer you in the right direction when you want to go off the rails. And I think God's always done that for me. Like there's been, sections in time in my life where I'm like, you know what? I'm tired of being good. I'm tired of doing everything right. I'm tired of being the one that, has everybody's back and does everything right, and start to go off the rails a little bit. And then God's like, whoop, let's just put this person in your life to bring you right back in, get back on the track, son. So, you plant the seed at an early age, you keep coming back to it. And I think that's why it's important for us to be there for our kids and let them know about God's love and let them know about the Bible, what it says, because there's no doubt they're going to get off track at some point.
Facts.
And if we planted the seed, then there's always the chance for them, they will always, I think it's always, will come back eventually. As long as God lets them, they're getting another day to live, I think they're going to find their way back to God.
Agreed.
So.
Agreed.
Anyways.
Do you have that song recorded?
No.
Oh, okay.
I have
I mean, if you did, you could just send it in and they could tag it on this.
Terrible version of it.
Well, we'll just play it live someday.
Yeah.
Then.
On Sunday?
Someday.
And Sunday.
And Sunday.
Someday on
Sunday
Sunday.
is Sunday. Sunday I'll be in French Lick, Indiana.
Well, the private events are normally on Sundays.
That's true.
I feel like.
Yeah, they have
Do I
been.
remember that right?
All of our private events have been on Sunday.
Yeah.
Is there one coming
Charity
up anytime
events.
soon?
No,
Not that I know of.
we put them on the back burner for a little bit just because it's gotten to where when we started these things, I think nobody had anything to go do because it was in the middle of COVID. And so I feel like everybody was like, man, I need something to go do. So they were willing to buy these tables, and we was watching these charities just make, what was it, almost 900,000 through the 17 or 18 shows that we did.
Yeah.
That we was able to raise right here in Murfreesboro and Franklin. And the last couple of times we did it, it was we almost felt like we had to like sell people on it.
Yeah.
As opposed to like, hey, we're doing this awesome thing. We're going to raise money for this charity. Because it wasn't ever for us.
Yeah.
The last one was the only one that was ever for our charity.
Now, on the flip side, we still do have that golf tournament coming up.
Yeah, we got a golf tournament.
So anybody's interested
Did you
in that.
get your passport yet? God. Yeah, so we're working on the golf tournament now. So we're still doing things, and we will do another one of those events eventually. We just got to make sure it's when we can get, enough people on board that want to buy it. I don't want to feel like I'm bugging somebody to come buy a table because it's not for me. I'm not selling myself. This is for a charity.
Yeah.
And I don't want to have to feel like I'm begging you to put money into a charity. Either you want to or you don't.
Yeah. No, I feel that for sure.
And we were blessed because we had, a 5 or 6 core people that were always there and always supported what we were doing. And, we love those folks, and we love the folks that even supported us one time, or even the ones that said, hey, we can't ever support you. I'm sure they do other things to support other charities. So, but it just got where it was harder for us. So we kind of backed out on that for a little bit and put our focus where God wants us. And Now we've traveled and done some stuff in, where is it? In Salina, Kansas. We did some cool stuff for charity stuff up there, and got to go speak at a bunch of different schools and speak at a prison and 3 VA hospitals. And that was kind of our
Yeah.
last run on that. I don't know. Have we done? Oh, we're doing the thing at the fountains on the first Friday every month.
Right.
It's kind of the only thing
No,
right
I was
now.
thinking about, wrapping up the subject that we were talking about, though, church and everything in general. Yeah, I don't know if this is a age thing or if it's where my children are at. That idea that people are picking through the Bible only what they want to read, or if it's the fact that I do feel like we're at a spot in this generation, this nation rather, that we're so desperately looking for an identity.
Right.
To the fact that we're confusing everything in
That's
general.
our identity. Yeah.
And like I was at a school with our charity. I believe you were there on this one. I can't remember. And there was a girl down front that was a little different than everybody else. I'll just leave it there. And I brought up the fact that in every one of these terms we're identifying with, they enslave us. Because if I walk into a room and say I'm Republican, well, I just lost half the room. If I say I'm a Democrat, I just lost half the room. We look at these phrases, whether they be Republican, Democrat, conservative, liberal, black, white, gay, straight, male, female. We take all these, they're just words.
Right.
And we identify with it. And somehow that's not enough because it's not what you were looking for. It's not the identity you were looking for to begin with. The only phrase that I can come up with, or no, I told the kids, there's like, you're more than a word.
Right.
You're a human being. And there's no way to describe that with a bunch of man-made words.
Yeah.
The only phrase I've found that encompasses everything and doesn't enslave me is child of God.
Yeah.
Because God created all and is all.
No.
Therefore, it's the only phrase that I can find that isn't everything. And I don't have to be enslaved to some identity that I created, whether I only wear black clothes or I do this, or, for our day and age, it was like kids that were gothic, kids that were like, are you the skater punk kid? What are you? Where do you fit in? You can be anything. You can wake up every day and be a total different thing, but child of God, that gives me that ability. And this little girl up front immediately goes, whoa. And I was like, did you get that? And she was like, yeah, like I'm a human being. I'm more than a word.
Yeah.
And it was so impactful in that moment, thinking about it and realizing that you can talk to people and, but I mean, my children, I've talked to them their whole lives. So where they go from here is their free will. My only avenue to really serve people better is to really put my money where my mouth is.
Yeah.
And start looking at when was the last time I went through a growth phase as a Christian? Where am I now? So I've gotten pretty decent at just loving on people and giving to people and trying to take care of people. Where's my sacrifice then? Because you kind of get to a point where you're no longer growing because you're no longer making sacrifices. So here lately for me, it's been a lot of what are the things in your life that you're putting before God?
Yeah.
And where is my sacrifice for God?
Yeah.
Because I do know that every time in the past that I have sacrificed and given up things, my life has grown.
Yeah.
Every single time.
Yeah.
And so now I'm kind of getting to a spot where when I look at how much my life has grown over the last few years, it's kind of making me kind of amp up and going, what else can I give up? If I really die to self, as the Bible talks about, what do I gain then? Like, what does that life feel like?
What's
What does that
crazy?
look like?
You don't even know how bad I need you to say that. I'm on right now. I'm in the middle of a 48-hour fast. I mean, no food. I'm having these vitamin shakes. They're not even really like protein shakes. They're just all the vitamins and minerals you need. And I was sitting here a while ago thinking, man, I don't think I'm going to make it through tonight. I think I'm going to have to get something to eat.
Dude, you got this. Yeah. And you know that especially now, and maybe that's why your wife put you on this. Maybe this is part of God's plan for you to now stop looking at this. I'm doing this to support my wife and going, all right, God, I will depend on you for the rest of these hours. I will give this.
you know, I got one more shake to drink tonight or whatever you want to call it, vitamin
You
water.
saving it?
No, I just in the order. I'm supposed to have it at 8 o'clock. So, in the way that it comes in, or not after 8 o'clock. So I started it yesterday, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna wait because I was gonna wait for my buddy that's doing it with me to do it, and I was like, I'll wait. And then I just looked at it, and I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna go ahead and start it today. So I went ahead and started it, and I got through the first shake yesterday. Got through the second shake. It was that third one. I'm like, dude, I need real food, and didn't do it. Fought it off. Had the fourth one. I thought, man, there's no way I can make it through tomorrow. And I woke up this morning. I had more energy. The inflammation in my ankle was down, like less pain than I've had in a long time. My weight dropped by almost 7 pounds last night to this morning, or yesterday to this morning, which is all water. I peed literally 75 times. The detox I'm doing is a liver detox, and it's a liver detox, and because of that you fast for 2 days, just doing these vitamin shakes, and then tomorrow I'll have a shake when I first wake up, and then at lunch I'll have a vegan meal, and it's got to be a lot of greens, a lot of stuff that's got magnesium enriched foods and things like that to help your gut health.
It's not a vegan.
It's not a vegan. My wife used to be a vegan. Never mind. We're talking about church.
Timing.
Anyway, so anyways, I'm doing this whole thing, and I was sitting here thinking, like, man, I'm gonna eat something when I get home. You know what? You've done it this far. You've done great. Who would have thought you was gonna make it 36 hours? You don't got to make it 48. But you know what? I'm about to make it all the way till tomorrow.
There we go.
Till tomorrow at 11 o'clock, whenever I get to eat my lunch and I get to have the solid food. And it's amazing how much energy I had today, like over the top energy. And I wouldn't expect that because yesterday I was so weak and hungry. And today it was almost like my body, I don't know if it just started saying, hey, oh yeah, we got all this fat here we can start pulling from. And really, I'm doing this. Partly, I was doing it to support my friend, and then just my wife's like, "Hey, let's just see how it works with you on this liver detox," and then eating on this new protocol, this new meal plan, because I have gained 100 pounds, since the end of Biggest Loser, and that's part of me that's like, you know what? I know some of that's muscle, but 40 or 50 pounds of that is fat, and it's time for you to get back, be serious about what you're doing, and
Mm-hmm.
and show that don't be less than you can be. And I've made excuses with, well, my ankle was hurt, so I wasn't able to do this or this, this or that. Stop making excuses. Trust in God, what He's got for you. And I don't know. It's you gave me that little extra bump tonight to say
You know that we're both on the same page with certain things like that,
Yeah.
as well. And I mean, that's just been on my heart a lot here lately. Like, what are the things in my life, that are distracting me from God?
Yeah.
What are the things, even if they weren't a distraction, what are the things that I'm just placing too much
Right.
emphasis and power in? And if I let that go, what does my relationship look like with God, and what kind of human do I wind up being? I know people act like, well, you can't, just do what the Bible says and think that everything's be hunky dory. No, I don't think things will be hunky dory.
Right, yeah.
What I do think is that I will be better prepared for when they're not.
Amen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I will also enjoy life more while I'm here. Because once again, I don't really have a thing against the Bible or anything it teaches. I have a thing against people a lot of times.
Yeah.
Those are the things that hurt
Yeah.
me. The principles of the Bible, though, it's hard to say. I mean, like,
Actually,
you could even go against, like the whole well, I mean, who really waits till marriage to have sex? Okay, I can agree with that. But tell me that marriage wouldn't be stronger if you
only had
met
one
someone,
experience, yeah.
you fell in love with them, you discussed all the things you wanted out of life, you built that image together. Maybe you graduated, maybe you found the job that you wanted to find, and then you got married to this person and you had sex for the first time with
Yeah.
that one person. Tell me, first of all, how much easier your life may look because of the decisions you made leading up to that. And then tell me that you wouldn't think twice before you got that divorce. Tell me how much stronger the bond of marriage
Oh, yeah.
would mean if this was something that you knew, I'll never have this again with any other person. This is
Yeah.
something that only I and her have together.
Tim Tebow and his wife.
Dude,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So so you can look at anything you want to in the Bible and be like, I mean, come on. But now really think about it. Life would definitely be better.
I just thought about this. I was at 48 hours at 6 o'clock tonight. So theoretically, this is longer than a 48 hour. This is all the way till 11 o'clock.
Did you just find an out to what you just said you were going to do?
No. No, the protocol is I got to do it until tomorrow. I mean, at
Oh, well,
lunch.
it is.
But I was thinking it was 48 hours because I'm thinking that's just 2 days that you don't eat. But really, if I stopped eating at 6 o'clock on Monday night, and I went all through Tuesdays. So at 6 o'clock last night was 24. So at 6 o'clock tonight was 48. So at 11 o'clock tomorrow.
Man, you're doing better than me. I don't know how you get out of
See,
like
that'd be
eating the
another
last. Did you
12
go to
at
bed at
6 in the morning
6:30?
would be
Because
enough.
that's
6 in the morning would be another 24, or would be another 12. So that's 36. That's 48 plus another,
That's 60.
12 to
That's-
60.
huh?
It's
You're
60.
at 60.
Yeah.
6
Math's
o'clock in
not
the
his thing.
6 o'clock in the morning, you'll be at 60.
Am I going 72 hours without food?
Sounds that way.
No, because I got to go till,
Are you going until 6
no,
o'clock tomorrow
I'll go
night?
till 11 tomorrow. So like
65.
Yeah, 65.
65 hours, no food. That's the longest I've ever-
65 hours, no food.
That's the longest I've ever
I
fasted.
did a 3-day fast once.
That's the longest I've ever fasted.
It was. I think around I kept going in and out on the third day. I'd either have energy or I'd be completely tired and think I'm not going to make it through the day, and all of a sudden it would go away.
Can you
again,
really
and
call
I'd
it fasting if I'm having those little mineral shakes?
So the
because I'm
fasting,
fasting food. So
Charles Snoddy, back to him, introduced me to fasting. And our fast would consist of hot water, lemon, and cayenne.
cayenne pepper, yeah.
Mm.
That way it keeps your
72
metabolism
hours.
going.
But it was meant to be like you're heavy in prayer through them 72, right?
Mhm.
Like you tie that fast to something you might be going through. Like
Right,
I'm
well-
praying for them 72 about whatever it is you're going through, or you, or even myself.
Yeah.
So I know we got to wrap up. The church that we currently go to, they do a fast every year, like
year.
January.
Daniel fast.
And that fast consists of, I think that's 40 days, like based off of 40 days, 40 nights.
Yeah, the
sort of
Daniel
thing.
fast. I think is
But that one is there's a food section of it too, to where you're only eating veggies one week, and then the other one is only one meal a day. You can eat whatever you want to, but it's only one meal that day. And they kind of go every 10 days. I think they change that over. But the bigger part to me was they also are asking, you don't have to do it like the book says, but they ask you to give up all secular media, secular TV, just things of the world, and only watch healthy, good, pure things, only be a part of healthy, pure things, whether it be music or anything else.
So basically,
Music
you
was
just gotta
definitely
turn off the TV and throw your phone in the trash.
Well, I bought Pure Flicks, but Christian TV ain't quite on the same level as everything. But I know we gotta
we
finish
gotta
up.
wrap this thing up. I just wanted to say I love y'all. I'm glad that I have brothers that I can talk to about church, that I can voice my opinions and not feel judgmental, and I can share with y'all my heart. Y'all can share with me. If you are out there and you're listening, I mean, our Facebooks and Instagrams are open. If you have questions about God, if you have questions about Jesus, I'm not going to tell you I have all the answers, but I want to tell you is I do know where all the answers are at. So we will find
And
the answer together.
if you ask me a question and I don't answer, then send a message to one of them, because it just means I didn't check it.
Yeah,
I haven't been on Facebook in probably 3 weeks. Well, Marketplace. I get on Marketplace.
700
a decent
unread
amount.
messages. But you feel free to send me a message. If I don't have an answer, I can always connect you with somebody that probably has a better answer. Whether it's, you're having trouble believing in God, or if you're at a point in life where you just need to find another church or another, way into Jesus, I would love to provide that for you in the best way I can. So
Heck yeah.
that being said, make sure you make sure you subscribe, make sure you share it with a friend, make sure you give us 5 stars, make sure you do all these other things, because if you don't do them, well, we're going to be here forever. We ain't leaving. We ain't leaving. Good to see y'all. God bless you. Refined life.